which veteran running back is most likely to have his value nuked by the draft next month, that this week on the couch. Always happy, truly happy to be joined by Ian Hartitz from Fantasy Life. Ian, when we look over the running back landscape, who's going to be disappointed when they see where running backs land in April?
I think Chase Brown is the biggest potential loser here. Okay. It was fun. Second half of last year. I know there were a lot of zero RB drafters who, got the league going, had a great chance to make the championship. Pretty shishy finale, got tackled at the 1 yard line like 3 times, got hurt at the end of the game, sliding down, the old Todd Gurley, Brian Westbrook situation. Always hate to see that. But when you look at what got him there, I know it's easy in hindsight to be like, he was a great mid-round pick. He was always going to be better than Zach Moss. And maybe that would have come to fruition. But to see Moss go down week 8, Brown at that point was only like a mid-tier RB3, really didn't have any other competition on the roster. I mean, Sig, if the Bengals go ahead and use their second-round pick on someone like Quinshawn Judkins or Travion Henderson, who's to say they couldn't just be the starter from day one?
Yeah, I think that Chase Brown now, I mean, I do think the Bengals love Chase Brown. I think that when they saw what he did as the guy, they thought, well, we're good, we're set. They signed Samaje Perine, but you're right. They said they were going to get a bigger back. They got a bigger back with Samaje Perine, but there are other bigger backs. You mentioned Judkins as someone they could get. I mean, the thing about this running back class, I just wound up looking through everybody. My first pass through the class yesterday is you hear a lot about how great this class is. And as far as truly changing the landscape of fantasy football, I don't know if that's going to happen, but there are a lot of contributors. There are a lot of running backs who can play a specific role for a team. So what we don't want to happen for Chase Brown, and you're right, it could happen, is, and there's a lot of bruisers. There's a lot of big backs. There's a lot of fast backs. There's a lot of backs that can contribute in the passing game. I think that the Bengals offense is now centered around Burrow and Higgins and Chase. But you're right that people need to keep their head on swivel if they have Chase Brown and they're expecting him to be the running back he was in the second half of the year. Here's my offering for this question, okay? Because I mean, if you ask a question, you should have an answer for it too, right?
That's fair.
I think that the running back to get out ahead of this and trade him now in dynasty leagues is Devin Achane. Yeah. I think that the Dolphins are not going to be able to help themselves, especially with some of the speed backs. Someone maybe like Bashal Tutin. Some of these backs that the question is, what do they think about Jalen Wright? And Jalen Wright didn't exactly pop last year. Now Raheem Mostert is gone, and we saw their willingness, less so in Achane's second year. But I think that they're going to go back to the well at running back. This is a team that usually has rostered 3 or 4 running backs. And I think they're not going to be able to help themselves. And unlike Cincinnati, the running game is foundational, and it was terrible last year, their running game. Now, I don't know if it's going to get any better. But the overarching conversation here is a lot of running backs are going to get drafted. A lot of backfields are going to change. I know in your winners and losers that came out after free agency at Fantasy Life, you had Najee Harris, and obviously Najee Harris is a fantasy winner in the short term. But is he somebody that should be in this conversation? Is he somebody that his value jump is going to last about a month and a half, and that's it?
Oh, 100% a possibility. And that's a dangerous game we play, trying to talk about all this stuff in March and April before the draft comes around. But I mean, I do think that Najee fits kind of the bill in Los Angeles for what Harbaugh and Roman are trying to do. Just this big, guy who you see walk off the bus and you just, these old school football coaches want to give him the rock, 20, 25 times a game. Could they certainly add someone on day 2? Sure. I'd like it to be a wide receiver or maybe just continue sprucing up that offensive line. But Najee, certainly on the 1 year, what was it, $6 million worth up to $9 million deal. Don't exactly think that's Saquon levels of security or anything like that. But I just wonder with Najee, Sig, it's one of these things where I think expectations sometimes warp our opinions of players more so than they should. Najee hasn't been a great running back coming out. I get it. But I was just looking today actually at, kind of regrading some of these past drafts and stuff. Like Najee went ahead of guys like Jamar Chase in that rookie draft back in 2021. Okay. We were worried about, oh, can Chase catch the football without the stripes on it and all this, August nonsense. Like ever since Najee came in, he comes in as the number one overall, rookie pick in that draft, first round real life running back. It was a Steelers offense that whether it was Le'Veon Bell, D'Angelo Williams, James Conner, just constantly fed these dudes workhorse roles. And no, he hasn't been good overall there, but that offensive environment has also been horrible. We've made far more
Right.
excuses for far lesser running backs in terms of the offensive line, the quarterbacks, the overall environment that Najee's dealt with. So at the end of the day, he was still good enough to thrive at Alabama, get that first round real life draft capital. And now he actually goes to easily the best offensive supporting cast and group of his career. I know Jaylen Warren made more out of his opportunities in Pittsburgh, but put Jaylen Warren's stats next to any other running back in the league, and you're going to see him near the top of the leaderboard. So with Najee, again, I'm not trying to sit here and say he's a top 10 real life running back or anything, but Sig, we've seen fellow guys like Joe Mixon, like even this last year, yes, Kyron Williams, have truly piss poor efficiency stats and pretty much everything we want to look at,
Mhm.
but they were still perfectly fine in fantasy land because of that sweet, sweet volume. And we know Najee can handle a lot of volume.
Yeah, that's the availability. One of the best abilities, availability.
Boom.
And it'll be interesting to compare and contrast. Now, I mean, in Pittsburgh's another in this conversation, right? I mean, I think if we're looking over all 32 teams and their likelihood of drafting a running back, you really shouldn't look at the depth chart this year. You should look at what the depth chart projects as next year. And I think for both the Chargers and the Steelers, there's nothing really on the roster for next year. So it would make a lot of sense for them to dip into this running back class. But is it in the first round? Is it in the second day? Is it in the third day? But if Harris and Warren don't inherit any obstacles, big obstacles, it will be really interesting to watch the two of them neck and neck as a fantasy comparison. Because, like you said, Warren, I think we watch Warren, the eye test. Warren's a better running back or has more to offer or adds more value to his touches than Harris does. But Harris is going to be in a new environment and a better environment. And Jaylen Warren, I mean, I'll just ask you this because we'll probably be talking about this as a Steelers fan. This is so depressing. This is so. I agree with Cam Hayward. Like, you want to be a Steeler, or you don't want to be a Steeler. Will it change your outlook on the Steelers offense if they get Aaron Rodgers?
I feel better about Rodgers than Mason Rudolph, albeit, small sample size be damn sick. The last 3-4 games we saw Rudolph in Pittsburgh easily the best, of that tenure. I mean, if you did just want to ask Rudolph and do one thing, and that's kind of be, this play action heavy, vertically minded passer, he can do that okay. Now, I'd much prefer for that to be your backup plan here and go ahead and get Rodgers. But is that really going to be changing the win total, from probably 7 to anything more than 8 or 9? I don't really think so. But Warren, maybe it could be good for him because as much as we talk about, these dual threat quarterbacks being, really a disservice to our running backs in fantasy football land, they're scrambling instead of checking it down. They're factoring into the rushing equation near the goal line. I mean, we've seen it with Rodgers and even Russell Wilson over these past 2 years, the veteran, the Kirk Cousins of the world who can't move anymore. Those are the guys we want. So God forbid, Sig, we do get Aaron Rodgers under center in Pittsburgh, and we have the Steelers get through the first 3 rounds without taking a running back. Why couldn't Jaylen Warren just be the cheaper version of Bucky Irving and Devon Achane? I mean, I think everyone kind of forgets that this dude had the August hamstring injury. He had the September knee injury. Before this year, Jaylen Warren was exactly, kind of the same line of thought as Bucky and Achane, this explosive pass catching running back, but we're just 1 year removed from it now. So the fact that Warren, again, hasn't been getting more just potential love as a legit RB1, hey, man, Gen Z Austin Eckler wears the same number, undrafted free agent, man. I don't see why Warren can't blow up here potentially.
Yeah, you want Warren to show that his talent could get more out of that situation than Najee Harris and his more pedestrian game got. But again, that Chargers running game, and they just signed Mekhi Becton, so another road grader at guard. We know what the
Just
Chargers
real
want to do.
quick
Go
though,
ahead.
like if it was week 4 last year, okay, and let's say
Yeah,
this Warren's healthy at this point, if Najee Harris, who never missed a game, you said it, best ability is availability. If Najee Harris was just out for a week and Jaylen Warren was the Steelers RB1, we probably would have ranked him as a legit top 8 running back, but he's
yeah.
not even close to that in people's minds right now.
Right. And I suppose there is that idea of the other shoe dropping with this draft
That's
running
fair.
back class and how many teams will change. Because just really quickly, I think that part of the problem is, and then why I bring up a running back like Achan or otherwise. So this is a fun exercise, all right? And I'm gonna give you my answer every team. We're gonna see if we can do this, Ian. Of whether a team is going to take a running back or not. It doesn't have to be any specific point in the draft. And you tell me if you agree. Okay. All right. We're just going to go right through the teams. So Buffalo, I say probably no.
I don't know, man. You know, if you've seen Cook on Twitter, he's asking for the $15 million and stuff. I know Buffalo's done a
Yeah.
really good job relative to other teams of signing their guys before. You know, they signed them a year early versus a year too late. You know, maybe Cincinnati could learn a thing or two about that. But you just look at Cook. I mean, Ty Johnson just led the NFL in yards per touch last year. Ray Davis in the one game without James Cook, you know, obviously has a fantastic performance and stuff. He looked good in his opportunities. Like, I think if Buffalo is being cap minded and saying, like, oh, you know what, we might have to spend some more money on wide receiver, I think James Cook might be a little bit more, you know, expendable than people are giving him credit for.
I don't disagree with that. I do think it would be surprising if they carry 4 running backs all year and they just signed Ty Johnson for like $5 million over 2 years. They like Ty Johnson. They obviously like Ray Davis. But I agree with you that if we're looking at next year, and I just said we're looking at next year, will they carry 4 backs? Maybe. New England, I think, is a maybe.
Yeah,
I
it's a
mean, they just
maybe.
have Gibson and Stevenson, and we'll see. I have the Jets as a question mark. Now, Breece Hall, talk about looking ahead. The reason I have the Jets as a question mark is because it's a new regime. Now, the old regime liked Isaiah Davis and Braylon Allen. I don't know about Aaron Glenn. What do you think about the Jets' possibility of taking a running back?
Honestly, it's pretty similar to New England's, you know, 2 more teams with just similar regimes, and you got to wonder if they even care. Because, hey, as a long time and still to this day, Antonio Gibson truther, I would be remiss to not point out how good this dude was in everything last year. But it was the Patriots, and it's Antonio Gibson, and people don't want to give him credit. So I'm just saying, when you guys see all the, you know, carry thresholds this year, that say 125 or 150, move those down to 120, and you'll see what I'm talking about with Mr. Gibson. So we'd
Yeah,
love to see him finally get that chance. Will he or will he not? You know, probably no at this point. But Jets are another interesting one because, I mean, Breece Hall, I know people love to point out it was like that one long. It's always hilarious to me. Like J.K. Dobbins had this too. These running backs break off 50-yard incredible explosive plays and they get tackled like the 5-yard line. And the, you know, reaction is just, oh man, they're not fast enough to score a touchdown there. So people always wanting more even after these great plays. But yeah, with the new regime, with the reality that maybe they don't want to keep Breece Hall long
right.
term. Braylon Allen is so young, but I would say Jets, Jets and Patriots certainly ahead of the Bills. But I think we named 3 teams that could be dipping their toes in the water already.
Yeah, 3 out of the 4 in the AFC East. Okay, AFC North, Baltimore. I look at it more as a numbers game with the roster,
Yeah.
and I think they've got Henry, they've got Justice Hill, who they just signed. They like Keaton Mitchell, and they
Should be
kept
healthy.
Rashawn. I think they're set. Baltimore set.
I agree, especially now with Keaton Mitchell, you know, a year removed from that catastrophic knee injury.
And adding that element, that speed element.
Yeah,
So
he's
it's too
good.
bad they didn't have. He's going to be really good. We mentioned Cincinnati already. Cleveland's a slam dunk, right? I mean, Cleveland's probably we got Cleveland, the Raiders, and Dallas. Although we said the same thing about Dallas last year, I feel like Cleveland, Raiders, and Dallas are the teams that are like I would be shocked if they didn't take a running back. Would you agree?
Yeah, because for them just to more or less ignore the entire free agency cycle, I know the Cowboys added Javante and Miles Sanders, but when Deuce Vaughn's your only other running back on the roster right now, you had to get some extra bodies in there, minimal 1-year deals anyway. Not overly concerned there. For the Cowboys' sake, I'd like to see them go O-line at 12 and, you know, consider using more of a mid-round pick on the position. But yeah, Raiders, obviously Chip Kelly wanted to run the ball more. Genty's been mocked at, you know, 6 to them a good amount. So we'll see what happens there. And yeah, man, we'll see. Who's the first one you said actually?
Uh, the Dallas, the Raiders, and Cleveland.
Cleveland. Yeah. So there's been some murmurs going on really throughout free agency and even before about the Browns wanting to bring back Nick Chubb. Would that change anything for you? It's a great story. Obviously, Cleveland loves him, but man, that was a rough look second half of last season.
Yeah, it was rough. I mean, I like Nick Chubb. I root
Of
for Nick
course.
Chubb, but Jerome Ford is a role playing back. I just look at this team's depth chart at running back right now. You're right. If they bring back Nick Chubb, but that's not an answer to
Yeah.
long term. Um, okay, we talked about Pittsburgh. How about the Houston Texans? When I go through the AFC South, I have maybe I could. It would make sense to me with Dameon Pierce going into free agency next year, Joe Mixon in the back 9 of his career. It seems like it would be smart for them to take a running back.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not a member of the Dario Gumbawale fan club over here, I guess. But no,
Special
it's
teams ace,
right.
Dario Gumbawale.
Kids these days don't appreciate a good special teamer like Dario Gumbawale. But no, I think you're potentially onto something. I put the Texans, kind of in that range we're talking about, almost with the Bills, where they don't necessarily need to right now. I mean, Joe Mixon is firmly locked up, at least for this year. They could get out of his contract, after this season if they want to, probably gonna have a future role. But yeah, if they do want to go ahead and look more into the future, go ahead and get it done. But again, it's one of these things where almost similar to the Cowboys from this respect. I mean, I'm looking at their draft picks right now. Houston did do a pretty good job of getting some extra shots. They have 4 top 89 overall picks, in this class coming up. But can we just use all 4 on the offensive line? Like, I do not want to see them passing on a lineman for a running back at this point, as good as the class might be.
Yeah, the Texans definitely one of the more interesting teams to talk about if we just look at what happened in the last month and what we learned about what teams think about themselves. And I guess they think like flushing the offensive line is going to fix the offensive line. We'll see in the short term, maybe not in the long term. I'm sure they have a plan. New offensive coordinator, Nick Caley, coming from the Ram system. Do you think the Colts are going to be satisfied with Jonathan Taylor and Khalil Herbert?
Didn't they have I thought they signed someone else that got hurt. They need a pass catching running back for sure at a certain point. I mean Taylor, he's got that Derrick Henry where if you can get him in the open field, he's fine. But I don't think Tyler Goodson is really that guy. Khalil Herbert obviously been the next gen stats, rush yards over expected king for a couple years now. So I think more of a day 3 guy, because I will say, I mean, Jonathan Taylor, Sig, like I've been, sick enough to get in some of these best ball streets here in March. And I cannot stop drafting this dude in round 2, because you just get to this point where it's like these borderline wide receiver 1s, wide receiver 2s. And it's like, give me the beast who's going to have 350 touches this year if all goes well. So we have seen this offense. I mean, JT will actually walk away from games with that CMC-esque 90% snap rate. So unlike a lot of these teams we've talked about, Colts are relatively set elsewhere on offense. You'd like for the quarterback situation to be better, obviously, but could the Colts actually, maybe be a surprising team to use a round 3 pick on a running back? I could see it, but I think it'd be more of like a Trey Benson, Blake Corum pure backup situation.
Right, for this year. And I mean, going back to Jonathan Taylor really quickly, the last month of the season after we all tuned out of the Colts because they were dead man walking as a team, he looked like the guy that rivaled Christian McCaffrey to be the number 1 pick just a couple of years ago. So he still got it. He's not in decline. So I think you're right to point him out as somebody.
Well, we forget about the injuries, Sig. I mean, we're both guilty of it too. But 2021, JT literally looks like the best running back in the NFL at that point. Okay.
Right.
2022, he has a grade 2 ankle sprain in week 4. He has another high ankle sprain in late December. 2023, we had that, maybe it was real, maybe it wasn't, back injury going on. Anyway, he misses the first month of the year and then he tears up his hand after that. And then last year, September 29th, grade 3 high ankle sprain, and all of a sudden, we give him credit in week 5 and week 6 when he's coming back from the injury. But by week 9, we're just like, okay, he's healthy. He's out there. Like, what's going on? So honestly, it kind of reminds me of what we were talking about with Saquon Barkley this last season, because a lot of people kind of brushed his early season high ankle sprain under the rug during his last year with the Giants. So Jonathan Taylor, man, a lot of these players, man, sometimes it does help just to go back and remember those early season injuries because, especially those high ankle sprains. I mean, how many times do we hear players in July just be like, yeah, I honestly never felt the same afterwards.
Yeah, and in this case, Jonathan Taylor did feel the same by the end of the season, but we had all tuned out. Now, this is what I'm making aside, and everybody knows out there. I love Ian. I love interacting with you. I love your presence on Twitter, Ian, because you really do have a presence. I feel your personality. I feel your energy. And one of the things that you do that's kind of a signature Ian thing is you will just post a cut up of a player with the name of the player. It's like, what are you trying to tell us? So before we talk about the Jacksonville running back situation, I noticed you put some Tank Bigsby. Is this somebody that you're out there fighting in the streets, those best ball streets for in March after you posted a cut up of some pretty awesome runs he had last year?
I was just honestly, I mean, when I'm going through, first of all, I originally started doing the video just because I wanted to have an opportunity in articles to be like, I'm talking about this player being good. Well, here's some freaking film to show you that. And, anyone that's kind of done these articles before knows how difficult it is to just embed videos in the article because they're so, large. So it ends up being a lot easier to tweet them out and then just embed the tweet. So that was the original kind of nucleus of doing that. But then, I mean, I watch film all the time and I try to, be a two birds, one stone type of person, be more efficient when possible. So, hey, if I'm, sitting around and spending my Monday evening watching Tank Bigsby highlights, why not get a little cut up out there and send some of the best of to the people out there? So really didn't have a major takeaway with Bigsby other than I just kind of was thinking the other day and, what else to think about, in the middle of March and how good Tank Bigsby was last year. But man, it's wild how at running back in 2023, Devon Achane is the most explosive running back in the league. Every single efficiency stat, like all these graphs we make, he is just basically moving everyone, skewing the graph because he is so far in the top right. He's incredible. Tank Bigsby, the exact opposite in the bottom left. And then last year, I should say, Achane, very mediocre. All right. Now, he also had the early season high ankle sprain, getting back to that point. Offense created without Tua. Like, I'm not trying to hate on Achane, but all of the efficiency stuff, all the reasons why we loved him really cratered. And then truly, arguably the worst running back in the NFL in 2023 in Tank Bigsby becomes one of the best with top 10 numbers pretty much everywhere. And honestly, seeing Saquon, seeing Jacobs, seeing even Joe Mixon, guys with horrible efficiency numbers in 2023, landing in new environments in 2024 and just being that much better. I'm wondering how much any of them are even worth a damn these days, Sig. I mean, how much really? I mean, look, we can see it with our eyes. I get it. And yeah, Bigsby, big, physical, fast runner, but I don't think he necessarily wasn't that guy in 2023. Could have been confidence, could have been this, could have been that. But man, anytime now when I'm just looking at these, advanced stats, the explosive run rate, the missed tackles per carry, yards after contact per carry, really, really grain of salt compared to some of these other positions.
I agree. I mean, this is why running back's the lowest paid position in the league, other than, kicker and punter, because it is seen as a position, I think accurately, that harvests the value created by other positions, by an offensive line, by run schemes. And that is why we're having this conversation, right? Because we're going to have a whole new crop of running backs coming in and changing the landscape. And you make a good point, though, that as we rank these running backs, as we get into one of the most fun parts, like if you don't have a dynasty team, you should, just so you can go through the whole idea, just like the teams do, of getting your war room together and you have your picks. Are you going to trade your picks? Are you going to trade up? Are you going to trade down? Are you going to trade for future picks? If you're on the clock, who are you going to take? I like to really stimulate, like I'm making this as a very important asset that we're deciding to use. And if there's a good argument based on your speech there, Ian, that the team is more important than the player, really, when it comes to running back. That's the environment that the running back is going to be in. Go ahead.
And it's because we're in this salary cap world that, we just have to be in. I mean, it's not like the Ohio State Buckeyes or Alabama's like, oh, running back doesn't matter. Just give me the 3-star kid. Yeah, of course they're going to get the best guy. In high school, usually your best player is playing running back, all right? But it's only when we get in the NFL that, again, the salary cap really necessitates you to make these tough decisions. And running back, yes, if you have to compare it relatively to other positions, does come up a bit short. But I think what we did see with the Eagles and the Ravens in particular, even to a slightly lesser extent, Packers with Josh Jacobs, having a great running back to an already established offense, that could be the cherry on top of the sundae. I love cherries on my sundae, but let's face it, we got to get the ice cream first. We got to get the whipped cream first. You could even argue the sprinkles are going to be a bit more important than that cherry. So nothing wrong with getting that cherry on top, but let's not, throw that one first.
Yeah, you're right. If you already have an established offensive environment, then a running back that has long speed or a running back that can break tackles can get more value than an average running back. But that's that last step, as you say. So, but going back to Jacksonville, bring us back to the original conversation. They do have Tank Bigsby. They do have Travis Etienne. His little brother Trevor is in this draft. However, it's a new regime. It's a new GM. It's a new head coach. And we're going to find out with all these new regimes, we're going to find out what they think of the running backs in the draft, but we're also going to find out what they think of the running backs that they have on their roster. So I think we need to be open to that. Tennessee, this is a team that needs everything, but that's another team where I look at what they have right now and think they should be looking at this draft class.
Yeah, and I think we even heard a hint from that with Callahan, where they were just saying that, and I think correctly so, that Pollard and Spears, pretty similar running backs in terms of their skill set, pretty explosive pass catching, but they don't really have that hammer, ever since Derrick Henry, and even obviously much lesser extent Deontay Foreman from some of these past years. So again, maybe they look to get one of those more physical, running backs. But even then, like, you do have Pollard and Spears, so I would like for it to be more of a day 3 guy. Titans, I believe, have running back you could argue as a whole, but I think they have some much bigger ones across that roster.
Yeah, they do. They do. I mean, starting out probably with a quarterback at number 1, so they'll take care of that need. Denver, I should add Denver, Cleveland, Vegas, Dallas, and Denver, the 4th team. I think that we would be surprised if they don't take a running back.
Those are the big 4. Those are the big 4 I had actually when I wrote up an article over at fantasylife.com on exactly that. But with Denver, we were wondering, because Sean Payton has said, he's referenced the Joker as tight end, but he's even said like Reggie Bush and guys like that, Darren Sproles can be that position for him. So, I'm not exactly sure if they feel the need to be using that round 1 pick on it, because, hey, Payton certainly over the years has gotten more out of these late round or even UDFAs, more so than pretty much any other coach out there. But, just at a minimum with Javonte gone, I don't think they've seen enough out of Jaleel or Estime. There's going to be someone at it. Just, hey, if it's a Mario and Hampton or something like that, like, yeah, we could be excited about them, going potentially top 3, top 4 rounds in our, redraft fantasy leagues. But wouldn't exactly, be the most shocked, I should say, if they do go a little bit later in the draft, just based on, Peyton's history of getting more out of less.
Yeah, definitely there'll be a team that we, in the first round, there's that part of the first round, Broncos, Chargers, Steelers, like the mid first round, where we'll be seeing. And I think with Jeanty, we're looking at Raiders, and if the Raiders don't take him, I think everyone will be surprised jumping ahead if the Bears don't take him. That seems like a perfect match. And that would be something to get excited about. Would you be excited about that, Ben Johnson, and the best running back in the draft?
Sure. Although I do wonder, like, what has DeAndre Swift done to just not, to everyone to hate the guy? Like, we used to like him as a fantasy community. I feel like he actually had a very productive, efficient season with Ben Johnson. I feel like if this was any other name, like in the world, if you just were like, hey, look at this guy, look at the numbers he's put up, 1,000-yard seasons with multiple organizations. He has history with his former play caller. Like, there's no other competition on the depth chart, but everyone's just like, it's DeAndre Swift. Like, well, what is it about the guy?
Right. I mean, it's one of those things where we're solving for X, and X being, why did Detroit want to move on from him? I think the Dan Campbell regime inherited him. They gave him a lot of opportunities, and whether it be because of minor injuries or execution, I mean, Swift does seem like one of those running backs that looks for the big play more than is the classic like grinder getting you 3-4 yards on every carry. But we'll see. But you're right. You're right that if you just took his efficiency stats and you assigned it to somebody else, that we didn't have this sense of damaged goods or otherwise, the kind of running back. It was shocking whenever the Bears made him the first signing of free agency last year, and he did actually produce. But you're right. It doesn't necessarily match. What about Kansas City? I feel like that's more of a riddle too, because if I look at their depth chart, I would understand, hey, if it's a second or third round and a pretty good running back is sitting there, why wouldn't they take a running back?
Why not? I'm with you. I mean, certainly let's maybe chill on the day 2 wide receivers, or at least refine your process before we waste a pick on one of those guys again going over there. But I will say, kind of the inverse of DeAndre Swift would be someone like Kareem Hunt, who just, could not buy an explosive play last year. But I want to say it was only like Derrick Henry and one other guy were actually better than Kareem Hunt in success rate. Who was the old commentators like, if you need 4 yards, Kareem Hunt will get you 4 yards. You need 5 yards, Kareem Hunt will get you 4 yards. So I get it. I would like to see them spruce it up a little bit, but hopefully Pacheco a bit more healthy, coming off again that what was it, the tightrope procedure that we've seen sap guys like Tony Pollard, Jalen Waddle shortly after having the injury. So maybe Pacheco is looking good again, but at a minimum, man, like, just remember Kareem Hunt in the 2017, 2018 seasons. I mean, just when you
Right.
do give Kansas City this explosive, even Damian Williams, man, playoff Dame, what he
Yeah.
was doing. Like when you actually do give them a threat out of the backfield, they can just be so dynamic because of all the stress Mahomes puts on defenses when he's scrambling around. Jerick McKinnon had actually some, nice stretches there as well. And they just have no one on the roster right now that can be that guy. So I do wonder, I'm not super deep in this draft class yet. That's what March and April and the rest of the offseason
Sure.
is for me. So I will get there. But guys like Devin Neal, maybe RJ Harvey, these, not necessarily round 1, round 2 guys, but the players who, again, can do the little things right, stay on the field on third down. I can see someone emerging in Kansas City where, no, maybe they're not exactly getting that, full-time role during the season, because I do think Hunt and even Pacheco are still going to be involved in the committee. But we've seen Andy Reid, once it does come time for the playoffs, really just almost turn over the entire offense to who he believes to be the best running backs. So be on the lookout if we see a round 4, round 5 guy with a 3-down skill set land in Kansas City. Wouldn't it be the first time we've seen Reid really make something out of nothing?
Yeah, and you mentioned a couple of guys there, Neal out of Kansas, Harvey, I think Central Florida, that have 3-down skill sets that will be there on the third day, or it's very possible because of how deep this class is. So that's one of those things where one of the things that people need to adjust is when we look at the success rate for running backs drafted in a particular part of the draft, maybe that's going to be a little skewed this year because of the abundance of running backs that are going to be NFL contributors lasting well into the third day, maybe even undrafted free agents, like a typical undrafted free agent this year, like a 4th, 5th round quality back might go undrafted. A 2nd, 3rd round quality back might last to the 4th or 5th round. We talked about the Chargers. We talked about Vegas. We talked about Dallas. Well, I'll serve up the Giants to you this way, since you said you've been out there in the best ball streets. Strong take on Tyrone Tracy going into year 2, either way.
I just worry when a dude's calling card, it's almost Kyron Williams-esque. Like he comes out, oh, this guy played wide receiver in college. I know Kyron didn't play wide receiver in Notre Dame, but his pass down ability was lauded. Like that was almost the big thing everyone loved about him. And similar with Tracy coming out. And to see them be so horrific in it, like it's not a great sign for me. And maybe it doesn't matter for Tracy. He's earned the Giants' trust. But man, you look at all the fumbles that honestly both these guys had last year. 5 for Tracy. We did actively see him get benched at one point for the issue. So I do get worried about it because it does seem like as much as he beat out Devin Singletary, we got the in-season hard knocks about the Giants kind of overestimating Singletary's market in the first place. So I definitely could see, this being honestly Tracy, a bit similar to Chase Brown, not as expensive in drafts and everything. So it's not as big of a risk, but Tracy, Jaylen Warren, and Chase Brown, like these guys are a day 2 pick away from potentially just being the straight up backup. So, hey, maybe I should be a little more lenient. Tracy obviously hasn't been playing the position for all that long. The fact he did have over 1,000 total yards as a rookie, certainly impressive. But I just, I get nervous when we have guys that are struggling in the pass game and having ball security issues, because just seems like those are the 2 easiest ways for coaches to yank them off the field.
Yeah, and that's how your guy Antonio Gibson could have a big year. Is Ramondre Stevenson?
Oh yeah, but Gibson in his own right happened to him a couple years ago,
Right, and now he's got a clean slate with this regime where Ramondre Stevenson. Yeah. I mean, he has a clean slate with Mike Vrabel, but I do think that with Ramondre Stevenson's fumble issues, maybe that's the way that Antonio Gibson gets in there. Since we're on the topic of the Giants real quick, if they don't take a rookie quarterback at number 3 or move up to number 2 or move up to number 1, how excited are you for Malik Nabers with Jameis Winston?
Oh my gosh, the moon, Sig. Make him wide receiver 1 overall. I mean, think about the just totally dirt average players that we've seen Jameis get the most out of, in these last couple of pit stops he's made. Even those like New Orleans years where he was, doing his thing for 6-7 games, throwing bombs to Deontay Hardy and other guys like this. I mean, the world could not get over themselves about Cedric Tillman, during that stretch of last year. Jerry Jeudy goes over, 1,200 yards and everything. Elijah Moore is finally looking like the guy that we thought he could be. So I'd be absolutely thrilled. Now, that said, even without Jameis, I think we're already kind of all ranking Nabers top 8. So not sure you can move him up that much higher. But I honestly think it'd be the other options in New York that we could be getting excited about, because that is the Jameis experience. Yes, Nabers will be the lead guy, but Darius Slayton just got $36 million. Okay. Wandale Robinson, as much as we want to call him Scandale and make fun of the guy, like, he is shifty in the underneath areas of the field. He caught 80, 90 balls last year, like racking up targets. Quarterbacks don't throw the ball to wide receivers unless they have some sort of certainty that they're going to catch the ball and that they think they're good. So, again, not that much competition, but we seemingly know the Giants, pecking order at the top 3 right now. So to see Slayton and Wandale be pretty much free with Jameis, man, they can be nice risers. And hey, maybe even that tight end position, because as much as everyone likes talking about Tyler Warren, there's a reason why Tyler Warren didn't get a chance to start, and really be that full-time player at Penn State until this last year. And, I'm not sure, maybe there's been a new tight end this year that's changed it, but Theo Johnson, I believe, was number 1 in RAS ever, since 1987. So was able to get that full-time starting role. So yeah, man, Jameis in New York unlocks a ton of possibilities. And I know it's easy to look at Nabers, but those 3 other guys, man, are going to be maybe a little bit more ignored than they should. But we see that, Sig. And honestly, I was thinking the other day about this with Chicago. You mentioned it, Ben Johnson coming in, the offensive line's coming in. So Caleb's up in the top 10. We're going to be thrilled about Jeanty. Oh, yeah, DJ Moore is going to ball out. Oh, my gosh, Roma Dunze, forget about year 1. Why is Cole Kmet the only guy in Chicago who people are afraid to give a boost to with Ben Johnson in town?
Right, and he's the red zone guy. So if they're in the red zone more often, the bar is low at tight end for fantasy relevance. So yeah, I think that if we see these offenses elevated, we look at the primary players, but looking at some of the secondary players is important too. Philadelphia's not that interesting. I mean, maybe they could draft somebody. I don't know. We'll see if AJ Dillon. Washington's one that's interesting for me, Ian, because if you look at Washington's running back depth chart, they should be thinking, what's our plan for the future? But this is a team that seems very focused on the present right now. So I can't imagine them going into the season without Robinson, Eckler. They just brought back Jeremy McNichols, and they have Chris Rodriguez. But this is also a team that I feel like if they do draft a running back, we would be really excited about that guy. What's your forecast for Washington at running back in the draft?
I kind of think they hang tight. I mean, just actually seeing McNichols and Rodriguez impressed, honestly, when they were given the chance down the stretch. I mean, they're 4 deep arguably right now. I think they like all 4 of these guys. Austin Eckler did not get nearly enough credit for, again, I didn't give it to him earlier in the show, talking about some of the bounce back guys, the Jacobs, the Saquons, the Derrick Henrys. Eckler was another guy who was in a bad situation in 2023. He was playing through an early season injury. And yes, it was less volume than we were used to seeing, but man, he really did make the most out of it. Even had, some pretty nice kick returns when asked to do that as well. Very unfortunate, late season concussion over there. So I'm with you. It'd be awesome, but I think it's just going to be more similar to, honestly, what the Ravens have been able to do with Lamar Jackson. I mean, Jaden Daniels does have that impact, just like Fields and all these other dual threat quarterbacks, where you can take an average run game, add Jaden Daniels to it, and it's going to become above average to great pretty much overnight. So don't really think it's the biggest pressing need, but yeah, man, Jeanty obviously not going to make it to Washington, but if they did surprise us and put like an Omario in Hampton or someone, or they said, oh, let's take Travion Henderson at the end of round 1. Oh my gosh, man, we'd be over our heels about it.
Yeah, that's the thing, is it would be a situation that we feel like we're going to get the most out of that guy. Maybe, but the alternative is maybe we're all sleeping on Chris Rodriguez from a dynasty perspective, from a year or 2 down the line perspective. Okay, so this is the point, and this is where the conversation really gets focused as we go through the rest of the NFC. And Ian, I'm just going to tell you my real quick answer, and I want you to only expound if you disagree. Okay. And then we're going to illustrate something here, because this is the rest of and we've already talked about Chicago. So this is the rest of the NFC. Okay. Detroit, doubt it.
Agreed.
Minnesota, Green Bay, I doubt it.
Agreed. Don't sleep on Marshawn Lloyd.
Yeah. And they like Chris Brooks a lot. That Chris Brooks is a good running back. Minnesota, if so, very late. Yeah.
I could still see even Cam Akers coming back. I don't think so. Right. Especially after the Jordan Mason trade now.
Exactly. Atlanta, if so, late.
Yep. Algier and Bijan, great one too.
Carolina, if so, late.
By the way, it's Bijan, Algier in that order, but Carolina, yes. Just to be clear with that. But yeah, no, after Carolina would have been a candidate, but again, after signing Rico, no, I'm with you.
Right. New Orleans, if so, late.
Maybe a bit more of a surprise, just kind of what we were talking about in the AFC East. Like there is just a new regime in New Orleans. Maybe they don't really give a crap about Kendrick Miller, Jamal
Right.
Williams is out of town. So I don't think Kamara is going to be displaced or anything like that. But I'd put like New Orleans almost like with Buffalo as like maybe a sneaky day two, but gun to my head, I would say late.
Yeah. Tampa Bay, no.
No. Don't sleep on Sean
No.
Tucker displacing
Exactly.
Rachaad White. We'll see.
Right, exactly. They like Sean Tucker. I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah.
They like their number 3 running back. And Rachaad White is a useful running back. Arizona, if so, late.
Correct.
Rams, if so, late.
Yep.
San Francisco. Now, San Francisco is the one team that I'll say probably.
Yeah, because I don't think Shanny's going to want to sit this draft class out. I mean, the amount of picks they've just wasted on running backs, going back to Joe Williams and some of those puff pieces we had written about that dude after they traded up for him in round 4. The Tyrion Davis Prices, Trey Sermons of the world. I mean, it seems like even when they had McCaffrey and some of these other guys, they still wanted to go in round 2. So now you trade away Mason, you let Elijah Mitchell walk. I mean, Garendo is fine. I like his speed score as much as the next Dynasty nerd out here, but I would not be surprised at all if they end up dipping their toes in those round 3 waters.
Yeah, and Garendo got hurt twice last year. Yeah. So both of these running backs have availability issues. And then Seattle, again, if so, late. I don't think so, though.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I think they Kenny McIntosh is pretty good. So, we go through the last 11 teams in the NFC, and 10 out of the 11 are either we're saying they're going to take one late or not at all. So we get into this almost necessarily, Elon, I'd say some teams are going to surprise us. Some teams are going to take running backs that we're not forecasting take running backs based on how many great running backs there are in this class. Or running backs, I'm sorry. There's one truly great running back in this class. And I know you haven't had a chance to work up the class just yet, but I'm just going to put out there, just watching Ashton Jeanty and the rest of these running backs, I think the gap between Jeanty and whoever your number 2 running back is bigger than the gap between number 2 and like number 20,
Yeah, I think that backs up with what I've seen, some of the Dane Bruglers of the world, where there's 20 plus draftable running backs in this class. But yeah, I mean, with Jeanty, look, he was the first running back I got into. And yesterday I just watched, get the all 22. Shout out. I got a nice Patreon hookup. I wish I could remember the dude's name, but some days you wake up Sig and your PFF Ultimate login no longer works. So we got to try to find a new way to get into those streets. But luckily have someone just shoot me a DM if you're interested as well. But yeah, I mean, I watched Jeanty, in the tough games too versus Penn State. And then we had the early season one versus Oregon and then just a blow up against Washington State. And, going through Penn State, you still see, okay, well, he's breaking 2 tackles on this 4-yard run. There's just all these, he bounces to this hole and all of a sudden there's 4 Nittany Lions, waiting for him there. So certainly was tough as advertised, but, seemed to make the most out of it. And you get to Oregon, it's like, oh man, okay, yeah, showing off some big plays. And then you get to just that Mountain West schedule. And it looks like you're just playing like a video game on rookie mode, more or less, like the things he was able to do out there. So on the one hand, I don't want to, like, part of me was like, well, he's doing it against Washington State. But if you're going to do it against Washington State, like, you'd expect him to be putting up bonkers numbers. And the man just rushed for more yards than anyone other than Barry freaking Sanders out here. So I'm going to go ahead and put the, overall, strength of schedule issues aside and just agree with the overall sentiment that the man is completely different. I know Lance Zerline, I think, threw a LaDainian Tomlinson comp around. I kind of saw like a little shiftier Todd Gurley, maybe the dreads and the numbers getting in my head a little bit too much, but hey, more explosive. Joe Mixon's another one I've seen thrown around there. Those are all really freaking good running backs. And I mean, the 3 teams we mentioned too, like the Raiders, the Bears, and the Cowboys, looking at 6 through 12, he lands on any of those, Sig. I mean, he's a top 5, top 6 running back in fantasy from day one.
Yeah, I agree. I would take him in the first round. I would be okay with taking him in the first round of your best ball drafts. I'd be fine with that. I think your colleague Thor Nystrom, who I look forward to having on here soon, Thor said it's like a slalom skier in a suit of armor. So I like that. I like that a lot because and
I like Thor's comments.
Oh yeah, it's awesome. And you posted something that was basically like watching Jeanty get you excited. It's excitement. And it's totally non-scientific, but that Oregon game, I think, is one of the best examples of this. There's very few running backs that every time they touch the ball, you sit up a little bit. Like, you feel it in the stadium. you hear the noise in the stadium change when he has the ball in his hands. And I think it's just a recognition. Intuitively, everyone understands, like you said, this guy's different, this guy's special. And for the dynasty folks out there, I would say without hesitation, I would trade, if you had a late first round pick this year, I would trade your late first round pick this year, next year's first, and your 2027 first
Ooh.
to get up to 1-1. I would do it without hesitation. Because I do think this year there's going to be a pretty steep drop off in your first round. Like somewhere in the first round this year, you're going to look at your like 1-8, 1-9, 1-10 and feel like this isn't even really worth a first round pick. And because of how many running backs that can be contributors in this class, you might look at the running back that's available in the third round and feel like, well, that guy's almost as good as the guy that went at like 1-9.
Yeah.
It's just going to be situation that probably sorts that out. On that note, something else you put out there this week that I think is something for people to heed is people overvaluing rookie picks right now. How do you advise people to take advantage of that?
It's just one of those things where I think you're spot on. Once you even get to the later part of round one this year, things start to be getting a little bit more dicey. And then round two, round three, it just cracks me up. Kind of again, I was using that Family Guy meme where it's like, oh, you guys have a boat or you should have this box. And Peter's going,
Right.
oh my gosh. I mean, the boat's a boat, but the box could be anything. It could even be a boat. And all of a sudden,
Right.
I just think we kind of fall into that sometimes where, again, we get so excited about the possibilities that these nameless, faceless rookie picks have that maybe we're not, overly willing to go out there and actually get a tried and true player. So just maybe seeing, if you can get some of those round two, round three picks, especially for, an actual veteran player who, is not a rookie. I understand it, but it's almost like we're always stuck, or some people, I guess, are always stuck in the rebuilding mode and mindset in Dynasty because it's fun. It's fun to fix stuff up. You know what I'm saying? It's less fun than just try to maintain or whatever. But I do think that, again, something to be said about these veterans being discounted. I mean, you've seen it, Sig. You do a Dynasty startup sometimes and you see people start these teams and it's like, when do you actually plan on competing, man? It's not illegal to win your Dynasty league in year one.
Yeah, people ask if I'm doing a dynasty startup, should I build for the future or try to win now? And I say both. You can do both.
Yeah.
There's no reason to have to choose between one or the other. But one thing you can't take advantage of, like you said, I haven't done a dynasty startup in a while, but I would imagine right now at dynasty startups, players like Aaron Jones and James Conner and Joe Mixon, even someone at the very end of your draft, like Raheem Mostert, you can probably punt running back early in your dynasty startup, knowing that you can scrape together running backs to keep you competitive this year. And then we'll figure out the future when we get to the future at running back because of the churn, because as we've gone over, this ended up being a running back show. This has been fun. I didn't go into this expecting us to talk running back situation and running backs, but it's that churn. It's the constant change. It's a young man's position. And then also we talked about it's a position where players that aren't necessarily heralded for their abilities can produce because they fit in the system. Kyron Williams, if Kyron Williams had gone to probably almost any other team, Ian, we might have never really talked about him for fantasy, right? So
It's
that's
wild. And just even honestly on Kyron too, just how long is this the longest leash in the NFL? Like the amount of fumbles he had last year, all the good things they said to Blake Corum. And I don't want to make this the, bash on Kyron Williams, but I don't think people realize like how really mediocre he was last year, but he got by with the volume and the short touchdowns. And sometimes that's all you need. But I just feel like if you asked, a handful of people, like who's better between Kyron, like who was better last year between Kyron Williams, Joe Mixon, and Najee Harris, like I feel like 9 out of 10 hands would be like, oh, Kyron, easy. And yeah, he might have been better, but it was not easy, man. They were all towards the bottom of the league, which is fine if you're in the right offense and you have a coach that trusts you. So kudos to Kyron. And, maybe he does the little things that, a novice like myself just doesn't pick up on, hitting the right hole, out of the zone rushing scheme and this and that. But, is wild to, again, see Blake Corum get all that praise and still, not get much of a chance despite all the fumbles time and time again. But I digress.
Right. Ronnie Rivers playing ahead of Blake Corum at times.
Right.
No, you're right. And these are those completely unpredictable and from our point of view, like I like to say, we're peeking through keyholes. These factors in fantasy football the how much coaches trust a running back or don't trust a running back, and then chemistry between quarterbacks and wide receivers. These are things that are more human psychology, not something you can measure with efficiency stats or 40-yard dash times and things like that, but they often end up mattering. We shall see. Before we turn the page to go off the rails for the last 10 minutes, anything else while you've got the couch audience? Thank you for taking out time to be with us here, Ian. Do you want to, as a parting shot on the football front?
Yeah, bro. Oh, always great being on the couch with this thing. It was fun being on your real couch, a couple months ago.
Yes, watching the Super Bowl.
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
we got to watch the Super Bowl together, the crew, and I'm going to be on Rich Rebar's show later this week talking about running backs. So let's pull this all together.
Yeah, but just in terms of, I don't have anything too crazy to go with. I think Najee Harris has kind of been the hottest take. I'll say this. Can the Patriots please do something? Trade too much for a wide receiver, maybe send Stephon Diggs $5 million extra than they wanted to. We got the report about Chris Godwin apparently being offered a blank check. That's fine. I'm sorry you guys missed on him, so they apparently tried there. But just if you could go back 2 months ago and be like, hey, it's going to be March 25th, and the Patriots have not made a single reasonable upgrade to their entire offense, I'd be pissed. And here we are, Sig. So draft's going to happen and everything. Hopefully at 104, they're either going to get Travis Hunter or one of these awesome offensive tackles, and that will be fine. But, it's not exactly a team when you look at it where they're just completely overloaded with all these, early picks. They have 38, 69, 77. So that's fine. I hope they hit on them. But, man, as much as I love Demario Douglas, can he not be Drake May's number one wide receiver for another year?
Right.
Come on.
Right. And maybe we can all will Travis Hunter there, and then the question becomes who's the third pick in dynasty rookie drafts, because Hunter as a Patriot would be an easy number 2. Okay, off the rails. First, I know before we went on the air here, you talked about you've been working on your golf game. What is it like? What draws you to golf? What do you find out there? What are you looking for out there?
Dude, I played in a couple rounds in high school, and I sucked. I was new to it, and the baseball swing was messing me up, and I got really frustrated, and so I didn't play golf throughout my 20s. And just these one of my best friend's bachelor party a couple years ago, went out golf, and I was like, all right, I guess I got to do this. And it finally struck me. I was like, oh, it's not even about golf. It's just about being outside with the buddies, having a couple of drinks, maybe smoking this and that. And it's just such a fun way to spend 3 or 4 hours of the day. So, and I'll tell you what, man, and getting my mind away from focusing on the score and just being like, let's try to hit some good shots out here. And if I can put together, a handful of good shots per round, I'm going to be happy. So trying to get that score low. Just got a 46 on the front 9 the other day. Please don't ask me about the back 9. We're focusing on the little victories right now, but so certainly a work in progress, but it feels really good. And it's an easier way to still have that, some semblance of competition without, going too overboard with it. Cause, back in the day, playing football and always, everyone, you're forced to, track your weights and all this. And it's just constant competition day in and day out. And I think I got burnt out from that grind a little bit. When I play video games, I'm not trying to go online and, get my ass kicked by these 12-year-olds or anything like that. Just trying to relax. But I think golf is just the perfect level of still being able to have fun and still being able to compete against yourself at the same time.
Yeah, you're right that first and foremost, like they say, touch grass, go out and touch grass. I mean, that's it. You're touching grass for 3 or 4 hours with your friends. You're just enjoying yourself. Everything else is shut out when you're out on the course. And I think it also works for disc golf. I enjoyed lots of disc golf rounds in my day too. And the nice thing about disc golf is it's scruffier. They're like pirate disc golf courses where you have to get permission to go on someone's land, and some people have set up disc golf courses in addition to the regulation ones. But as we were talking about before we went on the air, the interesting thing about golf, and my speech about this is always it doesn't matter, but we're talking about golf, billiards, darts, these different sports where it's just you and a task. And it's very much an exercise in Zen Buddhism where you have to not think to get that shot. But you really nailed it, that I think anybody that's going out there on the course, unless you're truly a perfectionist, and that's good luck with that, sounds exhausting to me. I don't want to be a perfectionist. Like you said, you just go out and every round there's a few shots. That's what it's supposed to feel like. That's what it's supposed to look like. and it keeps you coming back out there. And there's a lot of cool stuff out there. And I know you also took a trip to Costa Rica this
Yeah.
spring, and one of the most amazing places, Pura Vida, the Tico Ticos. What will you take forward with you spending some time in that amazing place?
Oh, it was just so relaxing, and definitely a tourist town, and everyone's speaking English there and stuff. So I'm not saying I got the, full authentic Costa Rican experience or anything, but just a great time. My wife and I, we hadn't had a vacation together since our honeymoon. That was in Thailand, which way longer flight.
Whoa.
So, yeah, and that was a fun time and everything. Don't get me wrong. I enjoyed me some Thailand, but that was man, just a lot more in your face, like almost like blindsided by like how culturally different everything was. So just, I think I am a beach bum of sorts at heart. So just getting the chance to go to Costa Rica, more so vacation on my terms, laying out during the day was a good time. I did love this one moment though, Sig. My wife was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go get a volleyball. We can go in the pool and hit it." And I was like, "Okay, sure." I'm gonna get a drink, and I come back and I see she has started this like now 10-person volleyball game that I'm walking back into. I'm like, all right, now we're playing volleyball, okay? And I'm going in there, not trying to be a hero, not trying to have my meet the parents Ben Stiller moment or anything like that. So just trying to go out there and have a good time. But on one play, I reach out, and I hit the ball, and my wedding ring just goes flying off my hand. I was like, "Oh, hold on, guys, I gotta find my wing." And there was this minute-long sequence of just like 12 strangers in the pool, all looking directly down from my ring in the water. As I'm like, Jesus, Ian, why of all days did you have to do something like this? But some lady, saint of a lady, found it. So still got my, cheap gold ring over here. So all ended up well, but it was fun to see, people from Australia. There were a bunch of Canadians there. Lit hockey game with a full Canadian bar for some reason in Costa Rica. But just even if I'm not someone that naturally I think seeks out a bunch of new interactions with people, just kind of like to stick by my friends probably more times than not. It was cool, getting outside my comfort zone, I guess, and doing some of that. So
Yeah, I think that. I mean, that's definitely something that down here in New Orleans, I know you and I had some experiences with the crew that you all were staying here on the other side in our Airbnb. That there's still something to trying to enjoy the world of people and other people, as it seems like modern life separates us and keeps us stuck in our own mindset. It's good. People are good. I mean, there's a lot of things, a lot of directions to go from here. But I guess since I'll ask you this as a parting shot. Tell me something that you'll remember from your time down here in the Super Bowl when New Orleans wasn't exactly New Orleans. It was New Orleans during the Super Bowl, but it was definitely
yeah.
memorable.
Man, the po' boy that we went out and got, man, that thing was
Ah.
so freaking good. All the food there was fantastic. But that was again, that's another thing. Well, yeah, like going out and eating the cuisine, the jazz concert that we went to was fantastic.
Mhm.
Like everything there was fun, but man, just I think the hardest I laughed was just like, getting back from the bars and, me, Reeves, Justin Edwards, Chris Allen, like just rolling through Saturday Night Live sketches we remembered and just, spending hours, probably messing up the algorithm for whoever is the next guest
Uh-huh.
in your Airbnb, but just laughing at videos that maybe we've seen a couple times before, but just again, kind of sharing those. It's funny to me sometimes how again, when you're able to be on vacation and stuff, just like the relaxed setting where now at that point, like, yeah, we're just sitting in front of the TV again, not even doing anything that crazy. But to me, like just having those laughs with the friends you came there with, like that's better
Yeah.
than like necessarily being out somewhere until 4 a.m. As great as those nights can be as well. And certainly did have one of those, but just good to get that relaxed environment with a bunch of people you love.
Yeah, shared experience, like the shared experience today. And I remember people ask, like, how did you jump into New Orleans? And the first time I came here in 1997, something woke up inside of me. And then when I went back to Austin, I went back to sleep. So I wanted to come back again. That following spring, my late great friend Jeff Wilson said, let's go to Mardi Gras, Party Gras. And I remember we were listening to Paul's Boutique, got arrested at Mardi Gras for jumping on a float. And there's so many things I remember and don't remember from that weekend in 1998. But one of the things I remember is Yo MTV Raps was doing a marathon of old school rap videos. And this was in 1998. So it was like a lot of stuff from the 80s. And I remember Jeff and I were just rapt, just watching it, and just it was just all washing back over us, that experience in the 80s of being like a white kid growing up somewhere. And then Yo MTV Raps would bring into your life this whole other idea of culture, way of being that activated so much, and we were reliving that. So it was a very similar experience. And I remember every time I would come over next door to hang out with you guys, there would usually be some sort of quarterback skills competition or
From the
some sort of
90s, yeah.
right. But it's it's true about this thing of like men will just sit around and name old football players, but what's really at the heart of that is affection for each other.
Yeah.
Is our affection for each other. It's not it's just a way for us to express that, like we do here on the couch, like Ian and all of his wonderful colleagues do over at Fantasy Life, like we do here in the fantasy football world. We want to spend time together. We want to love each other and enjoy our time together like we always do, folks. And we always want to do that for you because you're so very classy.